spent much of the last 15 years of my life consumed with one day in South Africa's remarkable history. That day being Wednesday, the 22nd of January, 1879. And I'm very aware that so many folks think that history is boring and history is for crusty old military historians and colonels. I want to tell you that I've come to the firm conclusion that these are stories about human beings, that these are stories not about conflict, but stories about compassion, and that there are a great many lessons for us to learn from the tales of yesteryear. And those of you who were gracious enough to come to last year's showcase may remember me talking a little about the Battle of Isandlwana, where in an impasse, a stalemate that developed, and the thin red line was holding, and the Zulu army had been checked in its tracks, a grand old man, a Zulu commander called Umkosana Kamfuntlana of the Biela clan, stood up and said to the men, "Don't run, don't run. The king gave us no such order." He'd hardly uttered that cry when half of his head was carried away by a British bullet. But the rallying cry had been made and heard. And the lessons I wanted any of you to leave with that morning were the fact that remarkable outcomes often arise from the actions of single human beings. Now, some of you may be interested in that fantastic battle piece at Isandlwana that saw the British Army suffer one of her greatest military defeats at the hand of a native army in her entire Victorian era. And I need each and every one of you to know that when the cannons began to fire, Lord Chelmsford, the British commander, who was 13 kilometers away off to the southeast, became alarmed. Something was wrong. So he ordered a naval aide-de-camp called Archibald Berkeley Milne to run up a nearby hill with a telescope and to glass the camp and to tell Chelmsford what was going on there. And Milne ran up the hill, and he looked across 13 kilometers of heat-distorted country and saw that the tents were still erect. We'll never know why the order was not given. The fact that the tents were still erect would seemingly indicate that the camp was not under threat. The first thing you do in a British camp under threat by an infantry enemy is you strike the tents, drop them, that if the enemy get into the camp, they can't use the tents for cover. If you've got to withdraw on the point of a bayonet through the camp, you want to be reversing into guy ropes and tripping over the tents. And if you've got to fire through the camp, you want all those tents in the way. The other comment made by Milne is absolutely macabre. He said he could see that the cattle were being driven into the camp. They were, but they weren't being driven by the British. They were being driven by the encircling mighty horns of the Zulu army. And I want you to imagine the confusion created by 850 standing tents, 160 unloaded wagons, shooting and shouting and firing and smoke. The pressure that this magnificent warrior nation were putting on the British. And into it, you're pushing the British line. The Zulus rallied now, beginning to push the British back into their tents. And with that, the line of command, communication, and ammunition resupply is gone. And with that, the slaughter would begin in earnest. And in the time we're allocated here this morning, I want to challenge each and every one of you of what you're seeing through your telescope. Thank you very much.